A cargo ship carrying over 10,000 tons of material is approaching Weijiang port in China. From a distance, everything looks routine. The vessel is aligned with the harbor. The sea is calm. The dock is clear. This should be a controlled arrival, but something is already wrong. The ship is coming in too fast. Not slightly fast, dangerously fast for a docking maneuver of this size. At this scale, speed is everything. A ship like this is not supposed to stop at the dock. It is supposed to ease into position long before contact ever becomes a risk. But that never happens here. The captain delays the deceleration. The vessel keeps its momentum far longer than it should. And then another mistake stacks on top of it. The anchor is dropped too late. That single delay removes the last real chance to stabilize the approach. Now the ship is committed. Too fast, too close. No time left to correct. From the shoreline, there is no visible panic, just a slow realization that the approach is wrong. And then the impact begins. The bow of the ship slams directly into the pier. Concrete doesn't resist, it breaks. The dock structure collapses in sections almost immediately, crumbling under the force of thousands of tons moving forward without control. Port equipment is crushed in the impact zone. Structural supports fail. Metal frameworks bend and snap as the ship continues pushing into the dock before finally losing momentum. The vessel itself suffers heavy damage near the front, but the real destruction is on land, where infrastructure that was designed for docking, not collision, is being torn apart in seconds. At Nava Secheva port in India, a large container ship is attempting a standard docking maneuver. The vessel, CMA CGM Mumbai, is massive but still under control, at least from the outside. This is supposed to be routine. Turn in, slow down, align with the pier, and complete the docking. But something goes wrong inside the ship's control system. A malfunction in the navigation computer prevents the vessel from executing its planned turn. That single failure changes everything. Instead of adjusting course toward the dock, the ship continues moving forward. Slowly at first, then with unavoidable momentum. From the perspective of the crew, the situation escalates in seconds. The ship is not responding correctly. The controls are not behaving as expected, and the coastline is getting closer. Too close. There is no clean recovery path anymore. The vessel drifts out of alignment and approaches the pier at the wrong angle. And once that angle is lost, the impact becomes unavoidable. The bow of the ship collides directly with the port structure. The force is immediate and heavy. Steel meets concrete, and the dock absorbs a hit it was never meant to take from that direction. Sections of the pier collapse on contact. Structural elements give way, and the edge of the docking zone is torn apart by the momentum of the vessel. The ship itself is also damaged, but the worst destruction happens on the port side, where fixed infrastructure has no way to move or absorb the force gradually. At Incheon Port in South Korea, a massive coal carrier is preparing to dock. This is not a small vessel. It weighs around 80,000 tons. A ship this size doesn't turn easily. Every movement is slow, deliberate, and carefully controlled by pilots guiding it into position. But something goes wrong during the approach. A miscalculation in navigation begins to pull the ship off its intended line. At first, it is subtle, a slight drift that could normally be corrected, but correction never comes in time. The angle keeps shifting, the ship continues forward, and the port infrastructure ahead becomes misaligned with its path. Now the situation escalates fast. There is no room left to safely recenter the vessel. The bow of the ship moves toward the dock at the wrong angle, and the momentum of 80,000 tons cannot be stopped quickly enough to prevent impact. The collision is heavy and immediate. Steel strikes concrete. The force travels through the port structure instantly, and sections of the docking area begin to fail under pressure. Cranes positioned along the quay are directly affected. Structural components buckle, and critical equipment used for loading operations is damaged in the impact. The ship itself sustains damage, but the port takes the worst of it, losing operational equipment that normally handles some of the heaviest cargo in the world. After the collision, operations at the terminal are disrupted immediately, with repairs required before normal activity can resume. Investigators later point to a combination of navigation error and pilot misjudgment during the approach. And that is what makes this case stand out. A vessel that large doesn't crash because of speed alone. It crashes because, once it is slightly wrong, it is already too late to fix it. And the next case shows how quickly even modern port systems can fail. At the port of Lázaro, Cárdenas in Mexico, a Panamax cargo ship is attempting to dock. These vessels are built to operate within strict size limits for global ports, but even with that standardization, docking remains a delicate process. Everything depends on precision, speed, angle, distance. All of it has to be controlled in real time. But during this approach, something goes wrong. Navigation errors begin stacking up during the final alignment. At first, the drift is small, almost unnoticeable. But in port navigation, small mistakes do not stay small for long. The ship continues its approach without correcting the angle in time. And the pier is now directly in its path. There is no recovery window left. The vessel drifts too far into the docking zone and approaches the structure at the wrong orientation. Then impact becomes unavoidable. The bow of the ship strikes the pier with significant force. Concrete breaks on contact. The structure absorbs the hit for only a moment before failing under pressure. More than 3 meters of pier are destroyed in the collision, with reinforced sections collapsing under the impact of the ship's mass. What makes this case notable is how quickly a standard docking procedure escalates into structural destruction. Investigators later conclude that careless navigation during the final approach played a key role in the incident. It is another example of how even routine docking procedures can turn catastrophic when precision is lost in the final seconds. A ship designed to fit the system, ending up breaking it instead. At Kocaeli Port in Turkey, a large container ship, YM Witness, is carrying out a routine docking operation. On paper, everything should be controlled. The ship is guided in by port navigation systems, with cranes positioned along the quay, ready for loading operations once it is secured. But during the final approach, something goes wrong. A navigation and handling error shifts the vessel's alignment at the worst possible moment. Instead of entering parallel to the dock, the ship drifts into the port at the wrong angle. And at this scale, angle matters more than speed. The bow of the vessel closes in on the crane line. There is no time left to correct the approach. Then impact begins. The ship collides directly with the port infrastructure. The force is immediate and concentrated along the crane system. One after another, the cranes begin to fail. Steel structures buckle under the force of the impact, and within seconds, 3 cranes collapse completely.
Eyvah eyvah! Eyvah eyvah! Lan retegecilere bir şey olmasın bari.
Investigators later determined that the cause of the incident was a combination of navigation error and handling miscalculation during the final approach phase. And when a vessel of this size loses alignment, everything in its path becomes part of the impact zone. And the next case moves away from cargo ships entirely, where even smaller vessels can turn dangerous in seconds. Not every accident involves massive cargo ships. Some of the most chaotic moments happen on a much smaller scale. Private boats and yachts trying to navigate crowded marinas. At first glance, these vessels seem harmless compared to container ships. Smaller, slower, easier to control. But that assumption is exactly what leads to many of the incidents. In tight docking areas, space is limited. Boats are often maneuvering within just a few meters of each other, with unpredictable currents, wind shifts, and inexperienced operators all sharing the same narrow lanes. And when something goes wrong here, it happens fast. A misjudged turn, a delayed throttle response, or simply overconfidence in how much control the operator actually has. The hull scrapes into another vessel or slams into the dock at an angle it was never designed to absorb. Fiberglass cracks, metal rails bend, dock posts snap under pressure. Unlike large cargo ships, there is no buffer zone for error. Everything is close. Passengers, other boats, and concrete edges, all within seconds of impact. What makes these incidents so unpredictable is how quickly they escalate. Just a short window where control is lost, and then impact. And because marinas are often crowded with people, these accidents carry a direct risk not just to property, but to passengers and bystanders standing only meters away from the waterline. In fact, smaller vessels often leave less room for recovery once something starts going wrong. And the next case shows exactly what happens when even experienced crews are not enough to prevent a sudden failure at sea. Unlike cargo ships, passenger ferries carry something far more unpredictable: people. On busy routes, ferries move between ports constantly. Short crossings, tight schedules, and crowded decks filled with passengers who assume the journey will be routine. But routine is fragile on water. In this case, a large ferry is approaching a docking area with hundreds of passengers on board. From the outside, everything appears normal. The vessel is aligned with the harbor, and the approach looks controlled. But as it gets closer to the dock, the situation begins to shift. A small navigation error during the final approach causes the ferry to drift off its intended line. At first, it is subtle, just a slight misalignment that could normally be corrected. But the correction never fully happens in time. The ferry continues forward, too close, too fast for a clean stop, and then impact becomes unavoidable. The vessel strikes the dock structure the collision sends a shock through the entire ship. Passengers are thrown off balance as the force travels through the hull. On deck, people react instantly, confusion turning into panic as they realize the docking has gone wrong. Inside the ferry, the impact feels amplified by scale. Dozens, sometimes hundreds of passengers are suddenly caught in a moment they cannot control or escape. Emergency procedures begin immediately as crew members attempt to stabilize the situation and guide passengers away from unsafe areas. In some cases, injuries occur not from the collision itself, but from the sudden movement and chaos inside the vessel. What makes ferry accidents particularly unsettling is how many people are involved in a single moment of failure. A small navigation error does not just affect a structure. It affects an entire ship full of passengers who had no control over the situation from the start. At sea, timing is everything. And when timing is lost, even slightly, the consequences scale immediately. A dock that cannot move, a ship that cannot stop instantly, and hundreds of passengers caught in between,